Welcome to The PA is In, the show created by PAs for PAs, where codependency with your supervising physician is a thing of the past, optimal team practice is the future, and physician associate has taken the place of physician assistant as the professional title of choice. I'm Tracy Bingaman, and I'm obsessed with redefining what success as a PA looks like and what it feels like. Here you'll find the mindset shifts, systems, and processes I use to escape healthcare burnout and integrate my work into my life. Work-life balance is a myth, and an integrated life where you thrive professionally, not a balancing act, is the goal here. My mission is to help you to grow into a unicorn PA who loves their job, has abundant energy, time to spare, and work-optional financial freedom. The PA is in. Have you ever just thought about picking up and moving all the way across the country, or wondered what it would be like to get a job in a place where you don't have a network? Do you get your license first? Do you get your license after you get hired? Well, Rachael Anstine is here to answer all of your questions about a cross-country move and how she picked up her career from Pennsylvania and moved to the middle of nowhere in Montana, how that journey has gone and how she has integrated into a new practice in a new part of the country while maintaining her clinical skills as a PA. Without further ado, here she is, Rachael Anstine. Rachael, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
If you could just take a minute to introduce yourself to our listeners, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
So my name is Rachael Anstine. I'm a physician assistant in colon and rectal surgery in Missoula, Montana.
Awesome. I would love you to tell us about your career path. Have you always done colorectal? What kind of brought you to that field?
So I graduated PA school in 2020 in the summer, so in the height of COVID, and there were very few jobs available. So I kind of applied all over and knew I was going to end up in a position I might have to change after not much time, but I ended up in ortho. So I was working in a private practice ortho for a year, and then actually got a colorectal practice reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking for a PA. We think you'd be a good fit. And I didn't know much about colon and rectal surgery other than just kind of the typical thoughts about it, being kind of a grosser, less sexy, appealing field. But they, had better benefits, better pay, and better hours. And I'm like, well, we'll see. So I took that job. And I really fell in love with colorectal as a whole. And so I was in that job for a year and a half. And then more recently, this spring, my husband Caleb and I decided that we were interested in a possible move to Western Montana. So just kind of looked at jobs around the area there, started reaching out to recruiters. And I guess I'll probably go into this a little more later, but had to kind of broaden my horizons on what I was looking for in a position. So I reached out to a bunch of recruiters and said, hey, if you have a position open in general surgery, colorectal surgery, or ortho in the next 3 years or so, can you just give me a heads up so I can apply and be in the know? And immediately, like that week, I got an answer from a recruiter saying, hey, I'm creating a position for colorectal right now. So we took the leap, and so now I'm working in Missoula, Montana in colon and rectal, and I really love it. I love the field.
And where did you guys move from?
We moved from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay, so this is like a huge cross-country, big deal move.
It's a huge move. I think it's 2,000 plus miles. So it's a big deal for sure. Yeah.
I would like to take a moment to sing the praises of colorectal surgery. So as a formal general surgery PA, I love the inside of the abdomen. So I think the inside of the abdomen is way cooler than joints. Sorry to all the ortho people out there. And also, colorectal has some really cool pathology. And as someone who's recently recovering from an appendectomy and a terrible GI bug, like people don't like it when their digestive system doesn't work right, whether it's like obstruction or, these things are problems. So before we dive into this big move, I would love it if you tell us a little bit of like the meat and potatoes. What's your clinic like? Do you go to the OR? What does your job entail?
Yeah, so my clinic now, my supervising physician has never had a PA before. So I've been there since July, and we're still kind of figuring out our workflow, how we do things, how I can best help him. And right now, what I can best help him doing is seeing clinic patients. He's just been overwhelmed because he's only one of 2 colorectal surgeons in the state of Montana. So he's been super overwhelmed just with clinic volumes. So I see clinic patients 3 days a week independently, and then I help him in the OR on those days if I'm available. And I also help our bariatric surgeon in the OR on a day that I'm free. So, yeah.
When I think about the true role of a PA and what this position and whole profession was created to do, I think of rural Montana. And I don't know if that's like someone in PA school at one point said, hey, there's all of these places where the population is low and there's these critical access hospitals and people are really coming from far away to get to these specialty providers, also to primary care. But like, let's talk about specialty because that's what you do, where they would be waiting months and months and months to be seen. And sometimes even with an AP team, they're still waiting months and months to be seen, but it's decreasing the wait times. It's increasing access. And also it's making people get their appropriate workup before they get to the surgeon. Because I've worked with surgeons in the past, like they don't always need surgery. They don't always need to go to the operating room. So if that surgeon's time can be funneled and prioritized to the people that do need surgery, that do need that cancer talk, that do need those things, the PA can be seeing and appropriately working up and triaging and referring and getting the other people what they need. And it just sort of everything flows better when you have more access to care. Do you feel like that's happened in your practice since you got there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in every position I've had, I've always explained to my coworkers how I feel the role of a PA is to fill in gaps, to fill in gaps for the physician, to make everything work best for them, but also to help maybe nursing staff or, if it's in the OR, like stay at the end of the case and help them move the patient and just fill in any gaps to make everyone's lives easier. So I think that's kind of what I'm doing now is just whatever the surgeon needs. I feel like I'm just kind of taking on that role and filling in the gaps. And if it's putting in bowel preps for several hours or doing stuff like that, I'm happy to do it. And I also think as a whole, the physician assistant profession, like you were saying, especially in like rural Montana, it's filling in gaps for patients to get seen and get care. Maybe it's not being seen by the surgeon or being seen by whoever, but it's filling in a gap to make sure they're getting care.
Absolutely. Yeah. I recorded an episode a while back with a surgery PA, and the title of that episode is That Actually Is Your Job. And the whole thing she was talking about, like, don't look down your nose at anything. Like, how can you be super helpful? And that is great for your next job, right? If someone sees that, they're going to want you on their team, but also that's going to make that patient's surgery shorter. It's going to make their length of stay shorter. You're going to catch errors. Like there's all of these things that doing that job, even the part of our job that's not glorious, right? Because like ordering bowel preps and like answering patient questions about bowel preps is not anything that anyone's like, that sounds amazing, right? That sounds like super rewarding, just like high level medical decision making. But still, that's important. And like, if that patient comes in for a scope and they're not prepped, they got anesthesia and they didn't need it, they have to come back the next day and get put to sleep again. Like there's actual consequences for if these things aren't done well and aren't done, or the decisions aren't made by someone who has experience, because we all know there's a significant difference in the experience and the medical decision-making of a PA versus the MA in your office or the nurse in the GI lab. It's just different. It's not bad. It's just different.
For sure. Yeah.
So let's talk about this big, huge cross-country move. So I have always dreamed of moving to Colorado. I had big plans to move to Colorado, like had looked at jobs and apartments before I met my husband. And now I still live in Pennsylvania. So I feel like I'm like vicariously living through this big move, like you guys did it. So tell me all of the things. So first of all, why Montana of all places? And what inspired you to think that from someone who had always lived on the East Coast that you could do this big move?
Yeah. Montana kind of struck my interest kind of from a young age. And from a young age, I was definitely uninterested by the crowds and the city life just in the East Coast. And it's even if you're not in a city, it's just, it's a whole kind of mentality of just being built up and crowded. And I was uninterested. So Montana seemed like kind of the furthest thing from that. So it was always kind of like a thought in the back of my head. And then in PA school, for some reason, Chatham had an association with a hospital in rural Montana. It was a 5-bed hospital, and so I did a
5, as in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5 beds. Yeah, 5-bed hospital. Yeah, the population density of the county where it was is 1.5 people per square mile. So
Wow.
Chatham had a rotation there. I signed up for it and I got it. And so I did 5 weeks in very, very, very rural Montana. And I loved it. And we skied every weekend, just hung out. The views were insane. And I was like, well, this is pretty much where I want to be. And then Caleb drove out with me for that and then flew home. And the next year, we're like, we want to go back. So we took a ski trip in Montana, hit Big Sky and some of the other smaller resorts. And again, we're like, this is where we want to be. But it always was just it was a dream that was out there. Like, hey, living in Montana would be the dream. And then we kind of started sitting down and being like, well, what if it's like a possibility? And I was like to Caleb, a lot of things have to go right to make this work. But so we kind of put things out into the universe, and I started looking at jobs, reaching out to recruiters, and kind of back to what we were talking about before. A lot of the jobs in Montana are primary care and emergency medicine at these smaller hospitals. So, and there's only 2 colorectal surgeons in the state. And so just putting it out there, talking to recruiters and saying, hey, this is what we're interested in. And luckily, I heard back from the recruiter and they had a position in colorectal surgery. And we came out to kind of scope things out again. We knew we loved it in Western Montana with the mountains, the skiing, everything, but came out again to see, hey, is this somewhere we could live? Like actually be 100% of the time, not just on vacation. And that was the first time we'd ever been to Missoula. We just had been other places in Montana, Bozeman, Helena, whatnot. And we loved Missoula. It was our favorite place that we had gone on the vacation. So that kind of put all the pieces together, and the job was there. I was getting a pay raise, better benefits, and we loved Missoula. So it just kind of settled it all and all somewhat fell into place, and we did it.
Yeah. So you got the job and then you got your license?
Yes. So I got the job offer, and like within that week, I started working on my licensing. In a way, Montana is easier and harder to get things done because there's so few workers. So there's one person who processes all the licenses for physician assistants, and it's actually my practice manager's dad.
Oh, so that doesn't hurt.
So I submitted everything, and they're like, it could take 6 to 8 weeks. I got it back in like 2 weeks. And because it's so small, they just like shot me an email. They're like, hey, we need this form. Can you like fax it and send it over? So it was pretty easy to get the license and get everything in that way situated and everything.
I've been practicing for coming up on 12 years, and I So I've renewed my license every 2 years as is required in the state of Pennsylvania. I'm licensed. I almost said like, and I've never gotten a new one, but like, no, I'm like, no one panic. I'm licensed. But when you're renewing it, you just submit your stuff and it gets renewed. And it doesn't feel like this big daunting thing. Like if you told me you have to practice in New York, I would be like, okay, there's an application. I have to get a new license. So I think that's probably something that does hold people back from thinking about making a move when they have this professional license.
I think it would depend a lot on the state. I think New York would probably be quite difficult. Montana had a step-by-step process to go through, fill out a form, they gave you a list of forms you need to submit, and I submitted everything. They emailed me back with what was missing, and I submitted that, and I think I had it within 2 weeks.
You know how most people have so much stuff that their homes feel cluttered and downright messy? The Simplified Decluttering Planner will help you to achieve a more simplified, organized home this year. Head to the link in the show notes to purchase your downloadable or digital calendar and use code ThePA for an exclusive discount. On the first day, you'll set up a declutter station in your home, and you can customize this journey to fit your schedule and go at your own pace. If you want your home to feel different next year, you're going to want to download the Simplified Decluttering Company's planner today. So at any point in this process, did you get there and feel like, oh no, we made a mistake? Or did you think like, oh, we got here and this is feeling very real? Because I think I can think of a lot of places I'd like to visit and vacation that I'm not sure I'd want to live. And I think when you're on vacation, you're not working, so it feels more fun. Like, did you ever get there and think like, oh, this was a mistake?
Yeah, I can think of 2 examples of that, I think. So when we came out, it was actually last February, just to kind of scope things out, see if it's somewhere we could live. I talked to this job and the recruiter and said, hey, I'll be in the area if anyone wants to sit down and chat just face to face. Otherwise, it won't happen. So I met with the practice manager and we were driving up to the hospital and I was physically shaking because that's when it sunk in. Before that, it was like, oh, haha, I'm applying to jobs in Montana. And like, oh, wait, no, I'm going to an actual face-to-face interview with a practice manager for this job in Montana. And I was shaking. And Caleb looked at me and he's like, what's up? And I was like, it's real now. And then I guess the second example of that would be when we first got here, like we just drove up, got the keys to our apartment, and our stuff had not arrived yet. We had a moving company and I wasn't going to start working for I think 2 or 3 weeks. We got here and we just kind of sat in our apartment. We didn't have any stuff. We had to go to Walmart and get lawn chairs. And we just sat here, no internet, nothing, just kind of staring at each other in lawn chairs. And we're like, well, here we are. And it was a little scary and just strange feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's this big, huge jump between this would be the dream and sort of saying, in theory, right? I would love to, this would be so great. Like I say, I would love to move to Colorado. But then when you actually think about like, okay, we'd have to pack up everything we own. We'd have to get a job. We'd have to get physically there. And then you have to become a part of that community. So it sounds like this is a relatively, I have no idea what the population of Missoula is. Probably should have Googled that before we hit record, but maybe you know. But it sounds like it would be like a relatively small town feel. Do you guys feel like you've integrated just being there in the last few months? Like, do you feel like you're still transplants? Do you feel like you're part of the community?
So a little of both. We definitely still feel like transplants, but the thing about Missoula is a lot of people here are transplants, for good or bad. There's kind of contention here about that, but Missoula's population is just under 100,000. So it's a lot of accessibility to everything you want or need, but still a pretty small town feel. And its roots are just in a small Montana town, but now it's rapidly growing. But the good thing about a lot of people aren't from here, and so a lot of people don't have family and friends. So a lot of people are very willing to just go out and go for a drink with people you just met like a day before. Or so we've honestly made more friends, more connections here in the 4 or 5 months we've been here than we did in 4 or 5 years in Pittsburgh, just because most of Pennsylvania, it's a lot of people who have been there a long time. Or you're in a big enough place like Pittsburgh or State College or Philly, you are close enough to family friends, college friends, high school friends. You'd rather go out and hang out with them than people you just met the other day, which is fair. So people have been very open and willing to just hang out, which has been really nice.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear your observations of like the cultural differences. So I have noticed this regionally, even on the East Coast. I grew up very rural, kind of middle of nowhere, Maine. And when we go home to visit my parents, when we go to the grocery store or when we are driving through downtown in my town where I grew up in Maine, it's so laid back. It's so casual. Like if you're wearing jeans, you're way overdressed, even if they're dirty. Like it's like just like so chill. I feel like having lived in Pennsylvania now for like 15 plus years, I see the difference between Maine and PA. I'm interested to hear like what your observations are of those cultural differences between, are you West, Midwest? What is Montana considered?
I guess we're like Northern Rocky Mountain.
Okay. Not in my list of differential of where it is, but that's fine.
So like Pacific Northwest is like a hair to the west of us, but like we're not Midwest. So that kind of ends like Eastern Montana and the Dakotas are kind of still Midwest, but we're like Rocky Mountain region, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. But I would agree with that. Everything's way more laid back here than Pennsylvania for sure. So Caleb's from super rural, small town Pennsylvania. I'm from middle of the road, I guess. I'm from York. But here we'll walk downtown, even during a work day, and you will not see a person in dress pants or like a male. Like you will not see a male in dress pants and a sport jacket. It'll be like jeans and like a Patagonia, and they'll be going to like a finance meeting, like at a restaurant, or like women, it's not dresses and heels with like a pea coat over top like you would see on the East Coast. It's like leggings and a sweater maybe. And so from that aspect of like clothing and just everything's just a lot more laid back. Oh, and time, like being on time and punctual is very different. Like we went out and there was supposed to be a dueling pianos at the bar and they just didn't come. They're like, no. And the bartender's like, well, what are you going to do? Guess they're not. But we like came here for this event and they're like, well, they're not going to come, I guess. And on the East Coast, it's like everything, you have to be early and everything is happening. It's very regimented. It's not the case here, which I appreciate a lot.
Yeah. Do you feel less stressed out, like in life and in medicine? Do you feel like work is less stressful? Do you feel like you don't feel as like rushed or kind of frenetic? Because I feel like I am definitely like an East Coast energy person where I'm like rushing. Although the older I get, the more I want people to leave me alone. I'm not sure what that says about me, but do you feel like less stressed out or less, pressured because of that change in culture?
Yes, very much so. I think I grew up with that attitude, being very happy in structure and a schedule and fast paced and just get it done. And my first job in ortho, it was 60 to 100 patients in a day. And it was just work, just running around. And then my last job in colorectal, it was every day, 8 to 4:30, no matter what, or later if you're stuck in the OR. And now my first week of work, I would be like done with my work at like maybe noon or 1. And my manager would come around and be like, what are you doing here? Like, do you have work? And I was like, no, go home. Go for a hike, enjoy your family. I'm like, what do you mean?
I do not understand what you are saying. I cannot compute.
You're working, but it's actually kind of as a whole, the town of Missoula and most of Montana, it's just a work to live, not live to work mentality. So if you're not actively working and you're done with what you're doing, it's go spend time with your family, go enjoy the outdoors and just what everything has to offer, which is very, very refreshing.
Yeah. And completely different than I think is the culture at a lot of places.
So different for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. So when you were making this big move, did you have to deal with objections from family or friends or questions or just other people generally voicing their opinions about this big, huge shift that you were making in your life?
Yes, there was opposition. It was mostly a positive response, like good for you, like we know it's something you wanted to do, but definitely a lot of opposition from families. Yeah, just with being able to see people less and a bigger barrier to getting to family and being together. Friends was not as much of a big deal. We have a pretty small circle of friends. Caleb and I are both pretty introverted, so we have our people, and that's who we're close to. And we know that no matter what, anytime we're near to them, we're going to go out of our way and make it work to be together and everything. Or we FaceTime routinely with people. But family was a bigger one. It was not so much opposition, but just kind of, I don't want to say disappointment either, just facing the facts of it and just not being able to be together quite as much. So that was a kind of a hurdle, but
Yeah. I mean, I think it's obviously going to affect the logistics around seeing people that you care about. We live near my husband's family, but far from mine. But the interesting thing that I've observed about that over the years is that when we're with my family, we're on vacation and we do it for an extended period of time. So we'll go for like a week, visit my mom and dad, see my sister, brother-in-law, and my nieces and nephews, and then come home. But during that time, we have lots of quality time. I feel like with my husband's family, they're so close, we could say like, want to come to dinner tomorrow. And then we would see them for dinner tomorrow, but it would be 2 hours of time where we're sort of like squeezing it in the midst of our busy schedules. It's much easier to see them on holidays because they can be at our house on Christmas morning and no one has to get on a plane or take a long road trip. And that feels easier. But I think we probably spend cumulative hours, more quality time with my family than we do with his family because it's easier to see them. So we don't plan a week. Like we've never blocked out a week to hang out with them because we see them once a month, So it's just a little bit of a different way to have that relationship.
yeah, I think we're still trying to kind of figure out all the logistics of it because it's something completely new to both of our families. I think both of our families, everyone's always been within a half hour from each other. And so the holiday thing or just, like my grandparents would just run and pick us up from school or from practice and all of that. So I think we're still navigating that, but I definitely agree with you about spending quality time. And like when my family came out here to visit for the first time and Caleb's family came out, we were able to go to like Glacier National Park or do some other stuff together that was definitely more quality time and uninterrupted type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what you make of it. I think that you can overcome those hurdles, especially if you're proactive about it. I think if you move 2,000 miles away and never call anyone, like that's a problem, right? You're not going to have the same kind of relationships if you do that. But if you're, intentional about it, that would make a big difference. Awesome. Okay. I want to change gears a little bit and talk about something that I see coming up as a frustration for PAs practicing clinically often, over and over again. And that is getting your work done at work. So efficiency and charting, making sure that you're getting notes done as you're seeing patients or even before you're done at the end of the day. Do you have any tips on charting efficiency and keeping up with notes so we're not taking work home with us at the end of the night or it's not waiting for us after that last patient leaves the office?
Yeah, for sure. I would say in my experience, it's a delicate balance of working with your EMR system to optimize your time, having presets and what do you call it?
Do you have smart phrases?
Like smart,
macros. Yeah.
Having those is great. But sometimes you can get into a place where all your notes start looking the same and you have like a note for appendicitis. You have a note for colon cancer. So don't fall into that trap, but have things there to help you be more efficient. Another thing I found is working with your office staff, your MA, your nurse, whatever, and just be really clear about what they can do to optimize your time so you're not doing double work, or say, hey, while we're in the room, can you put in this information in the after visit summary so we can hand it to them as they're walking out? Or can you put in this bowel prep while I'm discussing it with them? And that sort of thing. Another thing I found helpful with my current job is we have new patient paperwork, and it's almost laid out in the same way as our note. So our review of systems, there's a review of systems questionnaire on our new patient paperwork, just goes through all of them. So when we go through that in the when charting, it's really easy to just say positive, positive, because it's all right there in front of you and laid out in the same order, as well as like social history, alcohol, tobacco, other drug use, all that is laid out in the same way on our paperwork as it is in the chart. So I don't think it's super worthwhile to be spending a ton of time going through that unless there's something quite notable in it. Yeah.
Most PAs bring home a decent paycheck, but aren't sure that they're investing enough or what approach to take for student loans. Caleb Pepperday is a certified financial planner who works specifically with APPs. Seeing that PAs, including his wife, were overlooked and physicians were treated with respect in the financial planning industry, he sought to rectify this mismatch by serving PAs with the excellence we deserve. Caleb's mission is to help make financial planning affordable for APPs regardless of their asset level. Head to advancedpracticeplanning.com and hit the Schedule a Conversation button to book your free consult. Your money is your largest wealth building tool, and failing to utilize it well could leave you wanting to retire without enough in your accounts or still having student loan payments when your kids are ready to attend college themselves. Caleb's clients can enjoy their money guilt-free while feeling confident in their savings and investments. Head to the show notes, tap the link, and call Caleb for your free consultation. On the call, Caleb will help you to determine whether his one-time or ongoing financial planning services are right for you. I found I had the experience of working at a system when we were switching from one EMR to another, which you want to see some stressed out surgeons, ask them to keep working at 100% capacity, but start charting in a different EMR, and everyone will lose their ever-loving mind, right? And we spend a ton of time upfront building those templates and those smart phrases. And I found, and I think this depends on how robust your EMR is. This might not be true for all sort of outpatient EMRs, especially if you work for a private practice. But this was with a big health system. And I built a progress note that would pull all of the things that I was going to chart check anyway into my note. And so it'd be like, okay, I'm going to go see Rachel's my post-op patient. She's on the floor. So I have a post-operative progress note for an inpatient, where I'd open up that note, type the dot phrase in, and it would pull everything in. Because I used to check the chart, check the vitals, check the, labs, review the imaging, do all of the things that I was going to do, and then do the note. I had it pull all of those things in, and then I could scan through them in the note. And that to me saved me probably 7 to 10 minutes per patient, which throughout the course of the day, it's like, 7 minutes, but like 7 minutes for 12 people is like actually a lot of time, So if you can sort of make the note do your chart review and even like open the note so that it's doing the chart review for you, I find that can be really helpful.
Yeah, I agree for sure. I also have found that just checking back in, every 3 months or so in your EMR system, check your smart phrases, make sure it's still working for you. And once you learn more about your position, your charting habits, I guess this is more applicable when you're a new hire, but they set you up and get you to do smart phrases when you first start, but circling back to see what you're actually using, see what's important for you to have in there and what is taking up your time, and just set some time out for yourself, maybe every 3 months or so. Check back in, adjust your smart phrases, your notes, whatever you need to do in that regard.
And the other thing, this probably doesn't work as well if you are like the first PA in a practice. But if you're joining a group that has other providers in it, ask them what they do. And actually, the EMR that we used to have, you could search people like low key stalk them in the system and search their name and then steal or borrow their templates. And I always used to get so mad because I'd spent so much time on mine. And then the surgeons would be like, oh, I'm using yours. And I was like, I can tell because it's all beautifully formatted, just like mine. And it has like the bold and the plan is, beautifully bulleted. And it's making my notes look less original. But for the good of the order, it's fine. Go ahead and steal it. But if there's other people, if you're looking around the network and someone else has like just a great note that has everything that you want, like don't recreate the wheel. Number one, see if you can steal it. Number two, if you can't, because if the system's not built for that, send that person an email like, hey, I see your note's beautiful. What are you using to populate this note? Because I would like mine to be more clear. Because as you said earlier, it starts, you can't have it too automated where you don't put enough information. And then it's like, everyone that I saw today has a note that looks exactly the same, which medical legally is not a good idea. And I am old enough that when I was in PA school, they used to say, if it's not charted, it's not done, right? So if you didn't put it in your SOAP note, which was handwritten at the time, if you didn't put it in your handwritten SOAP note, it's not done. Now the question is, you charted it, but did you do that exam or did you ask that question or did you really take this history? So having it be, an efficient interview, a note that reflects what you gathered from an information standpoint, and also a clear assessment and plan. Do you have any tips for sort of organizing assessment and plan? Do your people have like number one, rectal bleeding, number two, colorectal like how do you organize your plans?
Usually it's usually a single problem. So it's kind of all roped into one. I think right now I'm at that place, that couple month mark where I do need to go back. Like you said before, when I started, I just copied all of the surgeon stuff. So I'm using all of his note templates, all his smart phrases. And right now I'm at the place to have to go back. But most of the time we're dealing with a single problem. And if not, they're very interrelated. So hemorrhoids with a fissure. It would just be patient has hemorrhoids and fissure, and our treatment is kind of focused on both. So everything kind of gets tied in at that point. So we just kind of, say the problems and write it out more in a narrative type form rather than one diverticulitis with abscess. Here's our treatment for that. Two hemorrhoids. So usually it's one thing or another, or very interrelated.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that I would say, if you're using templates now and you're like, guys, my templates are the worst, or like I built them a long time ago, they're not working for me. As you're going throughout the day, when you're like, oh, I'm having to delete this and type this in, delete this and type this in, take a note of what you're doing because you're doing it over and over again. Like there's like, oh, there's a typo in this one, but I'm just still seeing patients and still pulling in this template with this typo. And then every time I see it, I'm having to delete it. And it's pissing me off every time I'm doing it. Like put a little time on your calendar to fix that smart phrase or things that you see that are cropping up in your notes. So you're like, I don't like the way that looks, or I don't like the way that sounds. Those are kind of small tweaks to make that will make your day more efficient. Because if you're having to do that every note, if you do it one time, you won't have to do it again.
Yeah. And sometimes the IT or the EMR professionals at the health organizations, I found that some are very helpful, some are not so great, but just scheduling a meeting with them, because otherwise a lot of times you're just clicking around till you find what you think you want. Sit down with them and be like, this is what I want my note to look like, or this is what I want to be automatically pulled in. And they might just be like, oh, click here, 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 boom, done. Whereas it might take you, 2 hours or so to put together your ideal note that you really want to have. So just sitting down with them. A lot of times you do meetings with them when you first start and then never see or hear from them again. Sometimes they can be really great resources.
Yeah. The other thing is, can you click less? Because I feel like we're all click, 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 click. So if there's things that like those smart phrases that you can kind of pull in and click less, because I do really think charting fatigue is a big part of the frustration. Like no one said, I want to be a PA because I really like spending time documenting on a computer. Like we would have picked a different profession, right? Like that's not the thing about this profession that drew us. So if you can minimize that while still CYA and being appropriate and charting appropriately, then you're going to have more time to spend with your patients, and you're going to have more time to like take a deep breath and go to the bathroom and do all of the things that you need to do anyway throughout the day. Can only make you feel better about what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's ways I've seen surgeons documenting who can do an entire note without clicking by using toggles on the microphone or the keyboard. It's quite impressive to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. I worked with a surgeon who was the most efficient surgeon, the most efficient person operating I've ever seen. Never made a move unless it was necessary. Like wouldn't reach for something if he could get it handed to him. Was just so smooth. And he also was a very efficient charter. I'm wondering if there's some like correlation between surgical efficiency and charting efficiency.
Yeah, just overall life efficiency.
Right? Like they're just like, I'm not wasting any time. I'm not wasting any moves. I got to get out to my Porsche, so I got to go. That wasn't nice. He did drive a Porsche. That's not me profiling. That's a fact based on the story. All right, Rachel. So if people are like, wow, this sounds amazing. I want to ask Rachel questions about her move and this great new life she's building in Montana. What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Probably email. Just rachaelanstine@gmail.com.
Awesome. We'll put it in the show notes. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the show today. I've had a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me. I've had so much fun as well.
I don't know about you, but I love any conversation that reminds me that those dreams that are floating around in your head, that when you're asking yourself, what would life be like? Or could we actually do this? That when you sit down and break it into steps and take action, that those dreams can become a real reality. They could become your actual future. So if you've been dreaming about changing specialties or moving across the country, this is your reminder that that dream can become a reality if you start taking steps in that direction. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to another episode of The PA is In, This PA is Out. Congratulations, you've just joined an awesome club. By listening to a full episode of The PA is In, you are officially on the Unicorn PA team. Welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episode of the show. The life of your dreams exists on the other side of taking action. Keep making small shifts and keep getting better. Your life will improve, your career will soar, and you will have the confidence you need to create your own success. I will see you in the next episode. This PA is out.